Hi, Jennifer McChristian here, and welcome to my workshop. In this video, I will show you my painting process on how to paint a very complex scene by using simple and effective steps to creating a successful painting with beautiful color and strong design. But before we get started, I'd like to show you my supplies and materials that I will be using for this painting. Okay, so let's talk about the materials and supplies that I will be using for this painting. So here is my color palette. This is the colors that I'll be using for this particular painting, and this is generally the palette that I use all the time for studio and plein air. I will start off with the first color is a titanium zinc white, and then I use cadmium yellow medium, and the second color is going to be yellow ochre, and then Indian yellow, cad red light, quinacridone red, or this can also be called phthalo red rose. And then this is alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. And then as a solvent, I use Gamsol to clean my palette and also to clean my brushes. In this little nifty paint brush holder, and it's airtight so it doesn't leak. And of course I have my nifty paint scraper, and I'll be using this to clean my palette. And of course I have the palette knife, and I also use this to mix my colors and to scrape and clean my palette as well, and also as a tool to make straight lines and beautiful edges. These are the brushes that I use, and I prefer using flats and brights, mostly brights, because they tend to hold paint a little bit better, and I like the crisp edges of the brushes, so it creates nice beautiful straight edges. And I use a different variety of sizes, and these are just little tools, optional tools you can use, and they're like little squeegees, and you can use these to, if you make a mistake, you can use these to scrape against your painting, a particular section of your painting, to wipe out the paint. And these I'll be using for my value sketches that I'll be going into later on. And these are my little value markers. They're called Copic designer markers, and they come in 3 different values. And of course a pencil to draw in my sketch, and an eraser. So I think this is pretty much all of the supplies we'll be needing for this video. And now let's move on, and we're going to talk about the subject matter that we'll be painting today. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about the subject matter we'll be painting today. This particular scene depicts 2 old boats lazily floating in a river in Kaiping, China. These boats are often referred to as the junks. What drew me to this dynamic composition was all the layers and beautiful textures. I also like the directional lines created by the dock lines and ropes that are leading your eye into the composition. And I like the strong contrast of values in here, as well as the muted, beautiful, neutral colors. Since it's an overcast kind of day, there's no strong sunlight to blast out the colors. So all of the colors are very muted and gray. And there's a little bit of atmospheric effect in the background buildings, creating a little bit of distance. So overall, it's a very nice, pleasing composition. I'm really excited to paint this with you today. So now we're going to move on to the importance of strong design by using a simple 4-scale black and white value sketch. So now we're going to talk a little bit about value. And value is basically learning to see the black and white of your color. If your value study works, then your painting is guaranteed to work as an overall design and composition. Learning to see the black and white characteristic of color will help you to determine the overall design of your composition and to see if it flows nicely and if it's harmonious and balanced. Also, it helps you to see the overall design of your painting. So before I do my painting, typically I like to do a small black and white value sketch using only a limit of 4 values. So this is like a little sample of my sketchbook with a small, tiny value sketch. So as you can see in the boat painting value sketch, I went ahead and simplified the big shapes and linked my darks and lights together. I've broken down the major shapes consisting of only 4 different values. First value is the lights. The lightest light is going to be 1. And then your second value is going to be the light middle tone. Third value is going to be your dark middle tone. And the last value, the 4, is going to be your darkest dark. So it creates a nice cohesive design And that way I will be using this sketch as a guide to help me determine what values to mix for my colors. So my colors will have to match the values on this sketch. Okay, let's go straight ahead to painting and get going on this one. So before we start painting, I'm going to tone the canvas with a nice warm color and just to have an underpainting of a mid value. So it'll help me to determine my lights and darks. And I actually like to use this red underpainting because it creates a nice warm glow that radiates through my colors. So let's start. So the colors that I use for this is Indian yellow, and I'll take a little bit of the Indian yellow on my palette and a little bit of the quinacridone red there. And these two color combinations is what creates that nice kind of rich salmon-y color that you see in most of my paintings. And then I take a paper towel, scrunched up paper towel, and I lightly dip it into my solvent and kind of like just, you know, blend it into the pile that I mixed over here. And you want to make sure that this consistency is not too soupy or wet and thin enough. So I'm staining my canvas, making sure to cover all of the white like so. And then if you feel that the paint is a little bit too soupy, you can go back in with a drier paper towel and just kind of wipe off the excess so it's dry enough to paint on top. Okay, so now that I've got my panel toned with my warm color, I'm going to use a small number 3 bright or number 2 bright, and I call this my pencil brush because basically with this brush I will be going in and drawing in my general shapes of my from my reference, and making sure to not get too noodly with your drawing. You just want to kind of indicate with light construction lines just the basic shapes of your subject matter. And using the same pile that I initially mixed for my stain, I'm going to go ahead and start blocking in just the lines. So starting off with my horizon line over here and just indicating, you know, this is where the buildings are going to be here. And you want to keep this part very loose and sketchy because most of your drawing is going to be covered up with paint anyways. So this is just a map and a guide to know where your shapes are going to be. So here I'm just kind of indicating the general area of the shadow shape of the water. And here is going to be a darker value in here, be mid values in here. Then we're going to have the top of the boat here, like that, like that. And this is going to be a darker value in here. So I'm just sketching that in to kind of indicate where that dark value is going to be. Here, like so, and back here. Then we're going to have this over here. It's going to be that boat here, like so. Like that. And then there's another layer here. We're going to have another section of the boat here, like so, blocking in the shape in here. At this point, you can start correcting your shapes a little bit, like so. Okay, and here. That's going to be the front of the boat, like so, like that. So you can see it's still like a loosely based sketch. I'm not going to worry about the dock lines or anything like that because those are smaller shapes. So those come in towards the end of the painting. You want to just block in all the major shapes of your scene in here. Okay? And then what I do sometimes is where a lighter value will be, I will go ahead and dip my paper towel a little bit into my solvent and kind of wipe away the area that I know will be a lighter light. Just so kind of help me to guide me, you know, including the sky is going to be the lighter light. So sometimes I'll just wipe some of the excess off here, including the water in here, like that. Okay, and then you can start refining your shapes or your lines a little bit more here, like that. So this way, I have enough information here to get going with my color. All this area is going to be pretty much in a dark value. So I'm not going to worry too much about developing too much of a drawing in here because I'm just going to block in some colors to match the value. Okay. So this is a good way to, when you're dealing with a complex scene like this, you know, to approach the painting. Making sure that, and then just adjusting and drawing a little bit more. This is going to go over like this. In here. Like that. And then just kind of indicating the buildings again. You kind of, whoops, sorry about that. It's a little bit more indicating some of the buildings in here. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be exact because you can always adjust all your shapes later on. Right now, you just want to have some kind of guideline to where all your shapes are going to be. Okay, so right now I have enough information to start my painting, and I'm not going to worry too much about all the unnecessary details because this is the goal of the workshop, to just basically see the big shapes and translate them into your painting, and then eventually work into smaller, more detailed shapes as you're developing your painting. But for now, you just want to get a general map or guide of the general shapes that you're seeing here in the scene. Okay, so at this point now, we could probably start laying in our colors. So, you know, I just want you guys to see, you know, the process for doing the underpainting. Okay, so now we'll move on to color. So now we're going to start blocking in our darkest darks. Typically, I like to start off with my darkest darks, and I like to leave the paint consistency pretty thin because I like the painting method of fat over lean. And it's also easier to make adjustments at the beginning stage of your painting if the paint consistency is thin enough. But typically I will start off with my darkest darks or my shadows, because if painting on plein air, the shadows will move. So you want to make sure to nail those in. In this particular painting, the darkest darks are going to be the inside of the boat here, and then all the shadow area in here, the little accents in here in the boat, as well as the big shadow shape in the water. Okay, so first I'm going to start off with mixing a very dark color for the inside, because that's my darkest dark, and then everything else would be kind of a key to that or relate to that value. So I'm going to start with the darkest dark, and then I'm going to work my way just around the canvas, focusing on my darker values first. And I forgot to mention that I do not use black as a color on my palette. I mix my own very dark colors with the colors that I use, and remarkably come up with some very nice rich darks. So first I'll start off with this area. I'm just going to block that in real quick. Starting off with ultramarine blue. Since it's on the scale of the darker value color, I'll start off with that first, and then I'll add a little bit of the cad red light, because that neutralizes the blue. So I'm mixing that in. So you can see there's a little bit of color into this beautiful dark rich color that I mixed. And it looks like that whole area has a bit of a greenish tint. So maybe adding a little bit of cad yellow, not too much, because then because it's opaque, you don't want to lighten the value. So you want to maintain that number 4 value in that area. So that's a very nice mixture. And I think I'm not happy with that. I'm going to adjust a little bit more, maybe adding a little bit of Indian yellow. What's nice about the Indian yellow is that you can use it to warm up a color without changing the value. This is more like a stain. And also the ultramarine blue works that way, as well as the alizarin crimson and the quinacridone red. So you can use any of these stains to adjust your color without affecting the value. So maybe I'll add a little bit of the Indian yellow in there to kind of warm it up a bit, because any dark accent is always going to be very warm. And typically they're not in a cool hue, so they're usually always warm. So keep that in mind. Maybe a smidgen of quinacridone red. The idea is if you get the right color, the right temperature, and the right value, then pretty much you're on your way. And then you lay that on there, and the painting will kind of take care of itself. I know it sounds easier said than done, but so now I'm pretty happy with this mixture. Let me make that a little bit more. A little bit warmer. So now I'm going to take a slightly bigger brush than what I was using initially. Number 6 bright is nice size. So I kind of saturate my brush a little bit and wipe out the excess Gamsol, and maybe dip it a little bit just to get a little bit wet. And then I kind of get in there and just start blocking in that beautiful rich dark color in there. That's going to be my darkest dark in here, or one of the areas of the darkest dark there. And whatever color I use, I like to save and put on the side, because I'll probably most definitely be using it again somewhere else in the painting. So it's a good way to save your paints and keep the colors harmonious. So now that I've got that in, I'd like to go ahead and block in the whole water area, because that's a pretty big shape. So I'm going to go ahead and mix a color for that, and take it from there. So I'm going to clean this. So for that watercolor, or that color of the shadow of the water, it's a beautiful kind of green, like a murky greenish color, and that's also going to be in our 4 value scale. So I'm going to, again, take my ultramarine blue, a little bit more of the cad yellow, just to give it a greenish tint. Again, keeping in mind to stay within the number 4 value. Okay, so that's a little bit too saturated and green. So what I like to do to neutralize a color that's too saturated, either use a little bit of yellow ochre, or cad red light also works well as a neutralizer. So here I am mixing my color, making sure that I get the right value, putting in a little bit of Indian yellow just to warm it up without necessarily changing the value. And you can see in the reference that the bottom, this part of the painting of that shadow area is a little bit lighter and warmer. So I'm going to keep that in mind as well. So sometimes what I do is I'll mix 2 colors and I'll get the green shadow area in here, and then I'll mix another one, not necessarily lighter, but maybe a little bit more yellow to block in this area. And when I squint and looking at my reference, whether it's a reference on my iPad or on plein air, squinting will help me to kind of like generalize the whole local color for that area. So now I'll mix another little pile just to for this little area here that's a little bit more yellow and slightly lighter, because that's the you know, some of the sky colors coming in through here and creating some translucency through that water. And I always mix my colors with my palette knife. This is how I keep my colors fresh and clean. If I mix with my brushes, sometimes, you know, I accidentally pick up a dirty brush and the paint from the brush will pollute the color. So it's important to just always mix with your palette knife. So to me, these 2 values are still close together. So I'll go ahead and start off with the darker green. Okay, making sure that's the color I like. Okay, so now I will take a brush, making sure to clean it, and dipping a little bit into my Gamsol, a little bit, just so it's a little bit thin, and just kind of blocking in that beautiful green color here. That will be the shadow of the water on here. Like so, keeping it loose and sketchy. And then I'll introduce a little bit of the other color I mixed for this part here. It's a little bit lighter and warmer. Like so. Okay. And it might look a little rough at the beginning stage, but as you're working through your painting, you can always make adjustments. So I'm going to clean my brush. And since some of that color is repeated in here, I'm going to go ahead and block in the area in here, just keeping a general flat color to represent this area. And later on, when we start working in the smaller to medium to smaller shapes, I will be introducing more color into these shapes. So for now, we just want to start off with nice flat shapes. So I will replenish a little bit more of that green. In here. Okay, and I will go ahead and block in that green in here, right in here. keeping it loose and sketchy, like so. And of course, the color here, part of the boat, there's a kind of a deep purple greenish color, but I'm not going to do that right now because I just want to block in a general shape for that shadow in here. And maybe making the area a little bit wider in here. Okay, like so. Okay, I've cleaned my palette and I'm going to go ahead and start kind of working in the middle tones. And middle tones would be like a part of the front of the boat in here, and some of the area in the boat here, and the area in here. And all the little dark accents, like the front of the boat and the shadow on the step in here, the ladder that goes into the boat, I'm going to add those in later because they're smaller shapes. So I like to add all my little smaller shapes after everything is blocked in, kind of like, you know, painting the flea, painting the dog before the flea, or painting the whole poppy field before one flower. So basically that's kind of my process. I just block in the big shapes and then I go into the medium shapes and then eventually the smaller shapes. So, so now I'm going to go ahead and mix just my mid-tones for the front of the boat. And those are, it's kind of like a nice, like a yellow ochre, dark yellow ochre color. So I'm going to start with my, my blue again and putting, and then adding some yellow ochre in there, which is an opaque color. So that's going to lighten the value a little bit more, bringing it, you know, into the dark middle values. And maybe I'll add a little bit of Indian yellow in there just to warm it up a bit, because there's a lot of warms in there. Maybe a tiny bit of cad red. So once I have a color that I'm happy with, I will go ahead and block that in. Again, we're still keeping the paint relatively thin at this stage. So here I'm just indicating where the boat's going to be. So that's going to be in here. That nice color in here. I think it needs to be a little bit lighter, so I'm going to add a little bit more of yellow ochre. And maybe a little bit more blue to cool it down. And making sure to clean my brush. So let's start with that one's color instead. Yeah. Okay. And there's a lot of stuff going on in this area too. So again, this is, I'm going to keep that to the later stages of the painting. So I'm going to mix another color. Since there's a lot of that color repeating in here, I'm going to go ahead and add that in there as well. I want to cover the canvas as quickly as possible. Mixing a nice warmish neutral greenish gray. And I'm going to indicate that in here, right in here, like so. Okay. And here I'd like to make a few adjustments just to kind of, I want to darken this area a little bit more, just to bring out the contrast of this. So I'm going to go back to that green that I used initially. And yeah, just to give it a little bit more contrast in that area. There. Okay, cleaning my brush. So here I just want to indicate just Adding a little bit darker value in here, like so. Yeah. Right in here. Okay. All right. And there's a dark area in here, the boat. I kind of want to add that in there as well. And that's a similar color to this area that I blocked in here. So I could go ahead and block that little accent of dark in here, just to indicate the front of the boat. So I'm going to put my color aside here. So that front of the boat is similar value. However, it has a little bit more warmth in it. So maybe I'll add a little bit of cad red, not too much because you don't want to affect the value. You want to keep it dark. Maybe a smidgen of Indian yellow in there. So that's nice, rich, dark color in there. Okay. I don't like to mix my color on the canvas, so I like to mix it on my palette and make sure it's correct so I don't have to go back and do too many corrections on my canvas. Okay, so now that I've got that mixture in there, I'm going to indicate that area in here, just kind of right there, and just kind of indicate where that's going to go. I might go back and do the line there again. Yeah, and then there's a little bit of a curvature, like so. Okay. And then there's a rich dark line under here. So I want to make sure to put that in just so I don't lose my drawing and make sure that the boat stays proportioned to the subject. So I'm going to go ahead and use, again, maybe this pile that I've mixed and mix a color. It's a very dark bluishy kind of maroonish color. So I'm just wanting to put that in there to indicate the bottom of the boat, where the bottom of the boat meets the water. Okay. There you go. Cleaning my brush. So here I'm going to just add that beautiful rich line in there. Okay. So at this point, I'd like to start working in this area here. That area is kind of a little bit more of a purplish color. So I'm going to mix a color for that and just block in this whole area. And before I block in this area here, which is we're getting into lighter values, I'm going to make sure that I just continue with my dark mid-tones and before I work in my lighter values. So I'm going to start blocking in this area here to indicate the side of the boat. So I'm going to, of course, take my pile of color that I mixed, put it on the side because I will go back and probably use that in another section. Starting with my blue again. And I'd like to use, I'm going to use a bit of yellow ochre, maybe a little bit of quinacridone red to give it that kind of purplish hue. So that's, you can see here that's a little bit more blue. And maybe add a little bit more yellow ochre. I don't want to get too much into the white because that will cool down the color and make it too chalky. Now I'm going to add a little bit more yellow ochre into my color mixture. And I am adding a little bit of white, but such a small amount because it helps me to kind of see the actual color of that value, and if I need to make necessary adjustments. So I think I'm happy with this color. So I'm cleaning my brush, and now I'm going to go ahead and add that color here on the side. And again, we're just blocking in, keeping our shapes very simple, and as we work through the canvas and get into our smaller shapes, then we could go ahead and, fine tune it. And then there's a little kind of a boardwalk thing here, which is slightly lighter towards the end. So using the same mixture again, I'm going to add a little bit of white in there to indicate that little board panel there. Again, we're still staying within our darks. Okay. Clean the brush. Then we're going to indicate this shape over here, like so. And then I'm going to add a little bit of a darker accent just to separate that shape over there. Again, that's like a bluishy color. Okay, so I just want to indicate the separation of that board there. So that goes up like this. So it's going to come up here. So that's going to be that little area in here. Okay. And I'm noticing that there's a little bit of the green water, a shadow coming out past this. So I'm going to make adjustments. So if you see here at this point, you can start making adjustments in your sketch. So I'm going to extend that shadow, that water shadow color a little bit out like this. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to start working in this area in here because again, we're still working our darks. And there's some nice, beautiful neutrals in here. There's a light area in here reflecting from the sky of the boat. So I'm not going to add that in yet because it's a lighter value. And I like to add my lighter values after I'm done blocking my darks, because if I start blocking my lighter values now, they'll get dirty and polluted if I start, reworking my darks into the lighter values. So I'm going to just go ahead and adjust the color in here and put a little bit more definition in this area. And when I get ready to do my lights, then I'll add that nice sliver of light in here. But first, I'm just blocking in the big general shapes in here. So I'm going to clean my palette, save my paint. Like that. So starting off with my blue, add a bit of white, a little bit more white, some cad red, yellow ochre, and mixing a little bit of, again, a little bit of white, not too much. So that's a little bit too blue. So I warmed it up a little bit by adding some yellow ochre, like so. So now we're getting a little bit closer to what we need. So again, I added a little bit more white just to see the inherent color of that mixture. And then of course, it definitely needs to be warmer. So I'm dipping into my Indian yellow to warm it up a bit. And there's a little bit of pinky, like a pinky tint in that particular area there. So I'm going to add a tiny bit of cad red light. And again, once I start blocking in my medium to smaller shapes, I'm going to enhance that area and finesse a little bit more by adding a little bit more color and different variations. But for now, we just want to block in with a simple flat color to indicate that particular shape right there. So I'm taking that, and I'm just going to block that in here, like so. Indicate the edge of that boat there. Like so. Okay. And then this area here towards the front of the boat is a little bit lighter and warmer. But again, I'm going to add those in later. I just want to make sure to block in the majority of my canvas before I start blocking in the smaller shapes and the lighter values. So I still need to block in the background area as well as the shadow shapes for the water. Also, before I go and do this area and the water, I still need to block in this area and here. So there's quite a bit of stuff going on in there, including this little wooden panel. But first, I'm just going to block in a general dark area, and then later on, I'll just add a little bit more of a lighter value, like a third value here. And of course, the panel will go last because that's one of the lighter lights. So I'm going to add that on top of there. But first, I'm going to just block in a darker area just to indicate that shape in here. And now I'm going to mix a color for this area of the boat here. And when I'm squinting, I kind of see more of a kind of like a darkish greenish blue, kind of similar to what we had here. So I could probably use some of those colors I used before, and just go ahead and block that in. So starting off with some of the color I use, I'm going to add a little bit of white to that, and maybe a little bit of cad red to neutralize it, which is just to tone down the intensity of it, because it's a little bit too intense. A little bit of quinacridone red, a little bit more blue just to darken it. Okay, so here I have a general color and value that I will use to block in that shape. Like that. Blocking in, sketching it in like that. Okay, so now I've got that blocked in here, this little area, and there's a little dark accent here, or the little opening here on the boat, and that's also a darker value. And I'm leaving that out because I would rather just paint the whole area in here, because this shape is so small that if I just paint it in and then paint the lighter values around, it'll just get muddied up.
Welcome to Interviews with the Artists. I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air magazine. Today, we have a superstar among us. Our guest today is Jennifer McChristian. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Your career is on fire. You truly are a superstar. How did this all start happening?
Well, I've always been interested in art since I was a wee bit child. And so it was always easy for my parents to get me Christmas gifts because they always knew what to get me, like Crayolas or just pads to draw on, you know, because I was drawing on everything. I've always known that that's what I wanted to do.
You really did. So your self-identity has always been, I'm an artist.
Yeah. So even my parents, you know, when we were growing up, they're like, oh, well, we know that she's going to go to art college, because a lot of times parents don't know where to send their kids, because kids don't know what they want to do. So for me, it was like, okay, we're going to send her to art college when she's ready.
And where did you grow up?
In Montreal, Canada.
Oh, you're a Canadian.
Yes, I have dual citizenship.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
love Montreal. It's a beautiful
It
city.
is. I grew up speaking French. I was watching French TV, reading French books.
Nice.
Yeah, I went to high school and it had a special art department for, I guess, gifted students that showed, promise in the arts. And so I did like a pre-college course, and I took like art history and sculpture and introduction to fine art and stuff like that. Then we moved to California in '87. I had my sights on going to Otis in California. Then I joined the military.
And you joined the U.S. military.
Yeah, the Army Reserves.
You did.
I did, yes.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, well, you're welcome.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And so you joined the military. Were you ever deployed?
No, I was
Okay.
not. But we were sent to like Washington just to work on some stuff. I was more administration.
Yeah.
So during the Desert Storm and all that. But so it was a really good experience. It was a little bit challenging for me, but I appreciated like just being able to travel, meeting people from all over the world, and also just the experience I got from it. I mean, I learned how to do like map and compass. This is before GPS and all the iPhones, where I learned how to do the mathematical equations for,
Well,
because they'd put us in the middle of the woods and said, find your way out, here's a compass
well,
and a
that'll
map.
come in handy someday when you
I
get
hope
dropped
so.
into
Yeah.
you're helicopter painting, and you get
Oh.
dropped into a mountain somewhere.
Or like extreme painting. thing.
Yeah, and then
yeah.
all of a sudden the helicopter doesn't show up, and you got to get home.
I hope I can remember all the lessons I learned from there, but
Of course, you
I'm-
would have to have a map and a compass.
and that's right.
Not likely to
I'll
have
just use
either.
my GPS. I'll cheat. But so I had a little bit of time before college, and I did that for a while, and then I went to Otis Parsons.
What was your focus when you went to Otis?
It was illustration and design.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. They had a really good curriculum. 5 hours on live drawing, photography, which we learned how to develop our own film in a dark room. Typography was interesting because we learned how to design our own letter and just draw out each letter of the alphabet in different fonts. Yeah. and
So
just-
you got very strong compositional training, drawing training.
Oh, yeah.
What is it about illustrators? We have a lot of fine art painters who are former illustrators. Their paintings are to die for. I mean, they just have, I don't know what it is. What is it? How would you articulate
I
it?
would definitely have to credit to going to Otis because they have a really good design program. And also I worked in the animation industry for a while.
You did.
Yeah, that's where I met my husband. And but I did mostly like character design, prop design. But I was exposed to like just the storyboard artists and how they set up a scene. And so it's all about composition.
Was this pre-digital?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was all hand done, all traditional.
And can you say where you worked?
Film Roman, and also it's before Film Roman. They do King of the Hill, but I was working on offshoot shows and stuff like that. And I also worked at a company called Calico Creations. That was my first animation company. And they hired me like right off the spot. I didn't have any formal animation experience, but they looked at my portfolio and they're like, okay, let's get her in and we can just train her in-house because it was a smaller family-owned company. And that was a wonderful way to just learn. I think I was in the animation industry for about maybe five years.
Yeah.
And I kind of was at the point where I really wanted to focus on my art because I was doing my art on the side, on the weekends, but it just wasn't enough because I mean this was a full-time job and
Yeah.
and whatever time I can find to paint, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And I really had the desire because I went to art school, I just want to be an artist. So and then so it was a perfect time for me to kind of jump ship and just move on to just focusing on my art solely. So I moved in with Ben in Los Feliz, and at the time he was running figure drawing sessions at the Animation Guild, and then he rented out a space in Los Feliz that we now use as currently as our figure drawing workshop that we host 3 times a week. So I started going to that, and then I started like getting my paints and painting again, and just getting like some art magazines and clipping little pictures that inspired me. I had like an actual little notebook of pictures of art that I liked, and the plein air thing. I just was really intrigued by that. And so I went out one day, just got my stuff, and I didn't really have the fanciest easel because I was just beginning. So I mean, I went through so many easels because, you know, as you grow, you kind of just learn, you know,
What you like and what you don't.
right. So I was just going out my little easel, and I was hooked. But from the first painting, you know, I just went out by a little creek somewhere, and it was just like this. I'm in my element. I was just painting, and I was just like so happy.
Yeah.
And I was just completely hooked. So.
And your paintings probably changed.
Oh, since then?
No, I mean by going outdoors because you're seeing things differently.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also, I took some, you know, I bought books and stuff. Like one of my favorite books is from Jennifer McChristian, his first plein air book. I learned a lot from that because it's like really, it's very efficient, and just the instruction in there is like really.
So did you follow his advice and go out and do 100 small paintings in 30 minutes?
Not that, but I followed a lot of the advice in the
Yeah.
book. That's why I learned about like the values and, you know, the little value sketches, limited palette. So it was really good starting ground for me. And of course, I purchased other books and instructional books. And I was just kind of relearning what I mean, I had the education background from Otis Parsons, the figurative work and all that stuff. But the plein air, you know, I didn't really do that at Otis. So it was just a lot of fun. I really loved it.
Well, we need to get more of the schools putting together plein air programs. Some of them
Yeah.
have them. The Academy in San Francisco has plein air programs.
Okay.
But, and the schools in Russia have plein air programs. The Jacob Collins has his Hudson River School Fellowship, which is not directly affiliated with his school, but Grand Central or whatever it is now. But there are not enough people going out and doing plein air. And you know, the one thing that I think is really important, you touched on something that I think more plein air painters need to do. You were talking about you guys do a figurative thing every week.
Yes.
And it's amazing how much doing figurative drawing impacts your plein air painting.
Absolutely.
And how much plein air painting impacts your figurative drawing and painting.
Totally
So I
agree.
mean, it really all informs one another.
Absolutely. I mean, I mean, we've been running the workshop for like, I guess, 21 plus years, and that's a long time to be there.
Next time I'm in LA, I'm going.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to have
So
you
I
there.
have a model come to my house every week
Oh,
for
wonderful.
10 years.
Oh, awesome.
And my friends come over
Okay.
and we split the cost of the model,
Okay.
but COVID kind of killed that. So I haven't started it
damn
up
COVID.
since then.
Okay. Yeah, definitely come on by. We'd love to have you. But it's such a great space, and I've met so many wonderful people, and I would have to say that workshop has really helped me with my draftsmanship. I mean, at one point we had 4 sessions a week, and then we cut it down to 2, and then now it's back to 3, and they're 3 hours each. So I'm getting a lot of mileage. And even like we have a stage underneath, there's a space where I have like about hundreds of like drawing pads, like just hundreds of drawings that I've done throughout like the 20 years.
It's so valuable.
Yeah.
And you know, and looking at your paintings, which I've seen for the first time in person, I've seen them online. You won the plein air salon, which we'll talk about.
Okay.
But to see them in person, the paint quality, first off, seeing them online, they're fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
But the paint quality is so wonderful, and they just they're like jewels to me.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And this is a problem we have in society today anyway. You know, everything's on Instagram, and that's a beautiful thing because we're discovering artists. We've actually invited artists to do videos or the plein air convention or something like that because of seeing them on Instagram and how people respond to them. But to see your work in person is just so much better, and it was already pretty phenomenal. So
Oh,
we
thank
need to
you.
try and get more people into museums, into gallery
Yes.
shows, into seeing things in person,
Yeah.
because that's so critical.
Yeah. Well, I think there is kind of an just emergence of that starting to happen now. I'm just seeing people getting out more and just doing more things. You know, the COVID really did a number on us, and people are making up for lost time.
I think so too.
They're definitely making up for lost time.
So you were the recipient of the Plein Air Salon Award. For the people watching that might not know that, the award is a $15,000 cash prize. Of course, there's lots more cash prizes. And the one thing that we do with Plein Air Salon that nobody else does, we don't make up dummy prizes. Right? So what happens is a lot of people say, well, yeah, $50,000 in prizes in there. You know, it's all this stuff of, oh, you get this or you get that, but it's not cash. We only do cash. But you were the recipient. First off, why do you enter things like that? You're terribly accomplished. Why even bother?
Why not? Well, I think for me, like why I like entering contests, it gives me like a goal to like, I need to have goals, like a show or like some kind of deadline or, so that's like a goal, like, just to produce some paintings, you know, and it's just fun. I figure like, oh, why not? Let me see if I get something, you know, and if I don't, that's fine too.
Well, they're tremendous career boosters. You know, what I think happens is you have this, it's like clicking a switch you know, with some artists. Like some artists they're kind of toying with the idea of becoming professionals. Some of them are professionals already. But the minute you start competing, actually Peter Adams at the California Art Club told me this. He said that the minute we started reinstituting the gold, what do they call it, the gold medal show, he said the work started changing. Because when you're competing with other artists, you're trying harder, and then when you see what they do, you're trying to better that. It's not so much be competitive, but you just want to keep elevating yourself.
Yeah, competing with yourself, just kind of like having a goal to work towards, like, oh, how can I improve my work, or.
And we've seen that in the 10 or 11 or 12 years that we've done Plein Air Salon, 12 years, I think. We have seen the quality of entries increase exponentially. There's a big debate. There's not a right or wrong answer, but I'm curious about how you perceive it. What would you consider is or is not a plein air painting?
Well, to me, plein air, of course, has to be done completely on site. And I know...
So can you do a plein air painting of your cat?
If it's sleeping for many hours, then I could, you know, so that's possible. But like moving things like a cat or like even like a city scene where cars are moving, sometimes I'll just use reference for that.
You have some factions who say a plein air painting has to be done completely outdoors or from life anyway. Others, some of those people will say, you cannot take it into the studio and touch it up afterwards.
Right.
Because, you know, but if you see, oftentimes you bring a painting home from a session and you see something glaring at you that you missed. What do you do?
That's a good question. Actually, I do not like to rework a painting that I've done in the field and take it back, because a lot of times I'll mess it up.
Yeah.
Usually I do.
Yeah.
And I end up like screwing up like the whole freshness and authenticity of the painting.
Boy, that happens a lot.
So it's like I really avoid doing that. Unless it's like a glaring, like if there's like a little space that's open because I have the easel blocking it, I might paint in that little open space. But as far as like adjusting things, usually it's to me, I avoid doing that. And I usually don't. It's very rare that I do that, because it just, like I said, it just kind of starts to go downhill and ruins the freshness and that essence of what you captured outdoors.
So how do you get that sense of freshness when you're doing a studio painting?
Well, for one, doing a lot of plein air painting, because with that you can train your eyes to see, because working from reference is tricky. You have to do a lot of plein air painting, a lot of live painting to kind of train your eye to see the subtleties of changing color and stuff. And so, you know, having had a lot of brush mileage in plein air painting, when I go back to the studio, I can kind of like use artistic license and adjust my values accordingly, because I know exactly, like, well, a shadow's not supposed to be that dark. Like if something is in the light, then I kind of just adjust the values accordingly, because I've done it so much and I kind of know what to do. Most artists, when they work with photos, they kind of get to the point where they get a little bit constricted and they start to noodle and stuff because you don't have a time constraint, which is what I like about plein air. You have like a time constraint, so you're under pressure, so you're working more like instinctively. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, some of the best paintings I've ever done were the ones where it was extremely uncomfortable, you know, wind is blowing and you're holding the easel down, and you have very little time.
Yeah.
And so you just act instinctively instead of you overthinking everything.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jennifer McChristian, and welcome to my workshop.
Have you ever wanted to paint more complex scenes, but find yourself intimidated by the amount of detail? By learning to break down backgrounds and details into simple color, value, shapes, and essential edges, you can create a narrative that's both visually stunning and deeply meaningful. Introducing Painting with Style by the renowned award-winning artist Jennifer McChristian. Jennifer has dedicated over 2 decades to perfecting her craft, and now she's here to guide you step by step. With Jennifer's unique approach she has perfected over the years, you'll learn the art of simplifying complex scenes into manageable steps. Painting with Style demonstrates Jennifer's unique method that will change the way you see and create oil paintings. This approach doesn't only simplify, it leverages the chaos into a powerful message and story, turning your artwork into a display of strength and poetry. From blank canvas to final finishing touches, Painting with Style covers it all. Regardless of your experience level, this course gives you the skills to tackle paintings worthy of appearing on a magazine cover, setting you apart from other artists who shy away from complicated scenes. Get your copy of Painting with Style today and start creating art like never before.
Grab your brushes and your paints, pour yourself a nice hot cup of coffee, and let's get started on this fun and exciting workshop.